Welcome. I'm Jessica Kramer with MRC-TV, and today we're back with Ian Pryor, the Executive Director of Fight for Schools, who's been in an ongoing battle with the Loudoun County School Board. He joins us to discuss the latest in the ongoing school bathroom rape case and his fight for transparency in public education. Ian, thank you for taking the time to talk with us.
Thanks for having me.
So it just came out that the Loudoun County trans student, a 14-year-old boy who was dressed as a girl and raped two girls, had a third female victim. The second victim came out not too long ago, so we wanted to ask you, do you think that this is the end, or will there be more victims discovered? And does this change anything in terms of others' culpability, especially with the adults involved?
Well, Jason Miyares is going to be our Attorney General, and he has pledged that, investigating this alleged cover-up is going to be one of his top priorities right out of the gate. So I would expect if there are other victims, if there's any school culpability or, culpability from the administration, he's going to be able to uncover that. And, it's really appalling that, an individual that had, this kind of record, which was exposed in court, there was apparently something involving his record in elementary school as well, to be allowed to not only be in school unsupervised, going into a girl's bathroom, but more importantly, after that, despite an ongoing case that involved his criminal prosecution, he was allowed to go back in school to a different school quietly with an ankle monitor where he struck again.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand this. What exactly is the motive of all the adults involved in this case for kind of sweeping things under the rug and dropping the ball with him so many times?
Well, look, the first assault occurred on May 28th. And we know that going into the summer, Loudoun County Public Schools was considering their transgender bathroom policy, where boys would be able to use girls' bathrooms and vice versa. If this had come out before they voted on that policy, there is no way that the community would have accepted the passage of that policy. I mean, the parents had been expressing concerns about bathroom safety for weeks, for months even. And if this had seen the light of day, it would have politically killed Loudoun County's push to open up bathrooms and create these open bathrooms. So I think that's really why you saw the superintendent out there at that June 22nd school board meeting saying that there was no record of sexual assaults in bathrooms. Unfortunately, the cover-up here was, unfortunately for them, the cover-up was exposed. And now they continue to dig in their heels, and there's currently a report that has been completed. It was billed by the superintendent as an independent report, and it was announced on November 5th. Conveniently, they had actually hired the firm on October 28th, but they waited until after the election and after Attorney General-elect Miyares announced that he would be investigating them for them to state that they would have this independent report. Now, when I requested via FOIA last week that report, they said, no, we're going to not provide it to you based on attorney-client privilege. And that has now been in the news that they are not releasing that as of now. And so my argument here is, look, if this is an independent report, then there is no attorney-client privilege, and you can produce it with the appropriate redactions. If this was, in fact, prepared for legal strategy and advice in anticipation of an attorney general investigation or other litigation, then it's absolutely, sure, it's privilege. But that means that the superintendent once again misled the people of Loudoun County by saying it was independent.
Absolutely. So just to be clear, Loudoun County Public Schools have made obvious mistakes in this case. The latest one that you just mentioned is that they're now not releasing this information from their independent investigation. You've obviously given your skepticism, thinking that it's all because of the new Attorney General coming in. Do you really have hope that he's going to take these people down and hold them accountable, or do you think that, like we've seen, them kind of continue to get away with things?
No, look, I think that the Attorney General, Miyares, has made it quite clear that this is one of his top priorities. And I expect him to follow the evidence and go where it takes him. Look, we're also going to have a new state superintendent in Virginia at some point. And the state superintendent does have the option to remove school superintendents. So if I'm Scott Ziegler, I'm looking at, three different things here. One, pressure from the parents and potentially from the school board itself. Attorney General Miyares, and then what does a potential state superintendent do based on whatever Attorney General Miyares discovers and finds in his investigation.
So you had mentioned the bathroom policy and politics being one of the reasons why they wanted to keep this covered up. Another thing that we've been talking about with school board member John Beatty is the really pornographic sex material that they're covering in classes. Do you think porn had something to do with this trans student's extreme psychosexual record that the judge mentioned in this case?
Yeah, it certainly could. I mean, look, we're looking at this in our libraries, in our classrooms, books that are completely inappropriate for that age level. And, we, of course, want to see some kind of procedure where parents have to opt in for those books to be, one, either used in class, but also that they're taken out of those classroom libraries. Because, of course, we don't know what went into this individual's intent. But certainly when you have these overly sexualized materials in public schools that are readily accessible to young children, that's going to have a damaging effect on them as they grow. There's a reason why, you can't go to the store and buy a pornographic magazine until you're 18. So why would we have, other literature and comic books that have similar pornographic nature available to young children?
Is this a move that elected officials can go on and basically try to ban porn outright effective immediately? I mean, these cases are becoming more and more extreme, but also more and more common.
Well, one of the things the Virginia legislature can do is close this porn loophole, right? So effectively, you cannot distribute pornography to minors, but there's a carve out for schools and libraries. If you fix that loophole, you're going to see these books leave the libraries, and you won't have to ban them. The schools will just say, hey, listen, we do not want to put ourselves at liability for a potential cause of action or a potential investigation by law enforcement for having pornographic materials in our classrooms and in our libraries. So that's one fix that the state legislature could implement. Otherwise, I think what we need to have is a task force at the local level that includes parents from all sides of the debate that really gets to the bottom of how do we figure out how to have a proper system so at the very least, parents who do not want their children exposed to this can choose not to have them exposed to it. And so, until we see that outreach from our school board, we're not going to get to that point, but I think that there are opportunities to work together to solve this problem, both at the local level and at the state level with legislation.
Now, we know that while this was ongoing, the National School Board Association sent a letter to the White House comparing concerned parents to domestic terrorists, and the National Education Association sent a similar letter to social media companies urging them to stifle what they claimed is propaganda about critical race theory, which had supposedly stoked a small but violent group of radicalized parents. How do you view this? Is this not an example of the NEA and NSBA interfering with parents' First Amendment rights?
They're absolutely interfering with First Amendment rights of parents. But I mean, you look at the timing of that. It was the beginning of October, the NSBA letter, the NEA letter, the DOJ memo. It was right after Terry McAuliffe said in his debate, I don't think parents should be telling schools what to teach. I think this was raw politics. They were trying to turn the tide and brand parents as these violent domestic terrorists and insurrectionists. Now we see with this case, specific to that June 22nd meeting where Scott Smith was arrested. No, parents are not domestic terrorists. What parents are is sharp investigators and watchdogs that are going to do everything they possibly can to keep their kids safe. If the Biden administration doesn't like that, then the Biden administration is not going to be around much longer than 2024, and they are going to get absolutely smoked next year in the elections because this issue is not going anywhere.
Do you see Glenn Youngkin turning around the state of Virginia?
I do. I think it will be a combination of Glenn Youngkin, Winsome Sears, Jason Miyares, a House of Delegates that has a Republican majority, and a Senate that has a very slim Democrat majority. I think there's an opportunity for lots of different kinds of legislation to be passed. Even with Democrat support, I would hope for a transparency bill, a curriculum transparency bill, where parents can see the class materials online, they can see teachers training online. I'd also love to see transparency with these consultants that come in for these multi-million-dollar contracts to basically investigate the equity problem, and then they stick around for 3 years solving the equity problem. We certainly saw that in Loudoun County, in Virginia Beach. I believe they're doing an equity audit right now. These are things that parents should be informed of. In Loudoun County, I don't believe the school board was even aware of what was going on with the equity collaborative and the administration. So I think it's imperative not only to keep parents informed, but what you see is that these school administrations oftentimes keep their own school boards in the dark.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to talk with us about this. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.